Hi, this is Sarah. And in this short video, I'm going to reveal a weird little secret that will let you start speaking any language you want in just 10 short days, while practicing for just 30 minutes a day, and with no textbook, no grammar drills, no classes, no flashcards, and without studying any vocabulary at all. In fact, even though this might sound impossible now, once you watch this short presentation and do what it says, this rapid language learning technique I'm about to show you has been used by over 25 million ecstatic men and women around the world. You'll feel like you suddenly have the magic keys to the language center of your mind. You'll finally be able to take that trip to Italy you've been dreaming of and feel confident striking up basic conversations with the locals. You'll impress your date, not to mention the waiter, when the romantic sounds of French roll off your tongue as you order wine. You might even get a leg up at work by being the one person who can speak Chinese and impress clients at dinner. And I personally promise you what I'm about to teach you will work, no matter how old you are, no matter how bad you were at foreign language in school, even if you flunked high school Spanish or French and got an F on every test, no matter how busy you are, and no matter how many times you've tried and failed to learn a new language before, even if you've hired a private tutor, took intensive classes, studied for years in high school, or invested in expensive software and were disappointed like so many people are with the results. So why has learning a foreign language always seemed like a struggle, even though it should feel completely natural? I don't know about you, but the first time I tried to learn a foreign language, it wasn't fun and easy, which really is the way it's supposed to be. It was a nightmare. In 7th grade, I was forced to sign up for French class. Every day, I'd shuffle into the classroom, cram myself into one of those uncomfortable desks, and spend 45 minutes trying to force myself to pay attention to grammar rules, sentence constructions, and endless, painful vocabulary lists, all while hoping like crazy that I wouldn't be called on to explain the difference between present perfect and future imperfect, or something else ridiculous like that. Now, here's the really sad part. I was a pretty good student, but even after 3 years of French, even though I knew tons of vocabulary words and conjugations, I still couldn't speak the language as well as your average French 2-year-old. And I felt embarrassed and dumb every time I opened my mouth to try to talk to someone who did know French, someone who'd grown up with the language or just picked it up by living over there. Finally, like so many people I know, I just gave up. I resigned myself to never being able to speak a second language, to feeling like there was something wrong with me, and to always being disappointed and ashamed. But then, a few years ago, I stumbled onto a simple question that changed everything for me and opened a door that led me to speaking French in less time than I ever thought possible. What's the big question? Well, it sounds kind of silly, but here it is. Have you ever seen a 2-year-old studying a vocabulary list? I'm totally serious. Think about it. If you've been around kids at all, you know they suck up language like a sponge. It's almost like they can't help themselves. They're like little language learning machines. But kids don't study grammar rules, take vocabulary tests, or sit in a classroom to learn how to speak. In fact, we don't teach kids to speak at all. We just expect them to do it. They learn by doing what humans have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, listening. You'll actually discover that adults can learn a new language much faster than kids can. Honestly, learning new languages so fast is a survival mechanism. Language is what makes us the dominant species on the planet. And if we couldn't learn languages really fast, we simply wouldn't have survived as long as we did. In fact, when you look at how the human brain works, you'll discover that in a weird way, you already know Spanish. You already know German. Every language on Earth is structurally pretty much the same and is embedded deep in your mind. And right now, as you watch this video, you already have the ability to almost accidentally pick up any language you want in no time at all, in the same way you can sing along to thousands of songs you never meant to learn. The fact is, humans remember sounds and store them away in our memory automatically and unconsciously, which means we can soak up languages incredibly quickly without feeling like it's a struggle. In fact, working at it by studying a textbook or taking a bunch of tests is a great way to slow yourself down by memorizing a bunch of rules. Nope, the only way to learn a language fast is to learn it like a kid does, by hearing the language, speaking the language, and totally ignoring grammar, reading, writing, and vocabulary. When I finally figured this out, I was shocked and a little mad. But more than that, I was blown away by how quickly French phrases that stymied me for years suddenly just made sense, and at how my mind just opened up to new words, phrases, and ideas like a hungry bird waiting for a worm. So if learning a language is so easy, why don't you speak 2, 3, or even 4 languages right now? Great question. Here's the answer. Back in the 60s, a professor at UCLA and Ohio State named Dr. Paul Pimsleur got really frustrated with the way we teach foreign languages to kids, and downright embarrassed at how few Americans could speak anything but English. Looking at the way we taught language in schools, Dr. Pimsleur wanted to figure out what we were doing so very wrong. So he started to really study the way children and polylinguists, folks who know 3, 5, 7, even dozens of languages, pick up language so quickly, and compared it to the rote memorization drills we teach in school. Now, you've probably never heard of Dr. Pimsleur, but he's kind of a celebrity, often referred to as the Einstein of language learning. Why? Because just like Einstein, he thought way outside the box. And after years of research, he figured out a simple system to almost magically install a new language into any person's mind so that they don't have to work as hard and can strike up basic conversations in just 10 short days. Let me share with you the big ideas Dr. Pimsleur discovered that make learning a new language feel natural and easy. First, Dr. Pimsleur discovered that, despite what your high school Spanish teacher says, repetition actually damages your ability to learn a new language fast. Instead of endlessly repeating words, Dr. Pimsleur discovered that there was a magic interval between repetitions that caused new words and concepts to stick in your mind, and that when his students studied a new language according to this magic interval, they could permanently pick up words and phrases after just 3 or 4 repetitions, instead of the dozens or hundreds it would take before. Second, Dr. Pimsleur showed that learning to write a language before you speak it, like we do in our school system, is a complete waste of time. That's certainly not the way little kids learn. Years and years of his research, not to mention a lot of everyday proof, shows that the way for the human mind to rapidly acquire a new language is by hearing the language used naturally in an everyday context and interacting with the language so it really sticks in your mind. As Dr. Pimsleur was fond of saying, when you know what sounds right, everything else is easy. Need proof? Think about this for a second. If I say, I bread needs, does that sound right to you? Of course not. At a deep level, your brain knows that the phrase should be, I need bread. And that has nothing to do with you learning grammar rules or thinking about verbs, nouns, and clauses. It's because your internal language software already knows what language is supposed to sound like. Cool, huh? Third, the doctor stuck a dagger in the heart of the learn a ton of words and study for years myth by focusing language learning on a few core function words, which you can think of as building blocks. Words that you use every day, the words that children naturally just pick up in their everyday lives. See, you might think that you need to learn thousands upon thousands of words to learn a new language, but in reality, the core vocabulary you need to get by in a new language and begin sounding like a native speaker is tiny. And when you focus on these function words, your mind automatically learns grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation all at once, and without any of the mind-numbing study of traditional language learning. Finally, Dr. Pimsleur established his core principle of anticipation, showing that requiring students to anticipate the answer to a question drastically lessened how long it took for them to learn. If you've tried to learn a new language before, you've probably felt that deer-in-the-headlights feeling when someone asks you a question, and you desperately dig through your memory trying to figure out what to say in response. Using Dr. Pimsleur's anticipation principle, you actually learn to predict what someone is asking for, so you have the answer ready instantly without having to struggle or panic. Summing it up, according to Dr. Pimsleur's research, in order to rapidly and easily learn a second language, you just need to do 4 things. 1. You need to hear the language spoken by native speakers in everyday situations and utterly ignore writing and reading until the core hooks of the language are deep in your mind. 2. You need to anticipate the answers to questions to truly engage your mind in the learning process. 3. You need to focus on core function words and phrases used in everyday conversation. 4. You need to practice for only 30 minutes a day, even if you have to break it up throughout the day, such as while getting dressed, commuting to work, or while you're on your lunch break. When Dr. Pimsleur's research got out, it sent shockwaves through the language learning world. Over 25 million people all over the world have used Dr. Pimsleur's methods to start speaking dozens of different languages fast, without textbooks, without vocab lists, and without working so hard at learning the language. Heck, Dr. Pimsleur's techniques have been sourced by military and government agencies like the FBI. And you know, they wouldn't be buying just any method unless it had a long track record of success. Now, if you're like a lot of people, you might be thinking, okay, you've convinced me there's a faster and easier way to speak a new language, but how do I actually do it? I'm glad you asked, because with your permission, I'd like to introduce you to the Quick and Simple course. Start speaking any language in just 10 short days. The Quick and Simple course is a step-by-step audio program based on Dr. Pimsleur's proven methods and is designed to take you from knowing nothing about a language to striking up basic conversations in just 10 short days. And it works even if you don't speak a single word of that language now. Even if you flunked your language classes in high school, and even if you think you're just plain bad at foreign languages. If you're like most of the thousands and thousands of people who've gone through this program, you'll begin to sound like you were born there. Native speakers will stop in their tracks and comment on how natural you sound. You'll start thinking in your new language whenever you speak it. You'll find yourself responding to questions automatically without having to scour your memory for the right word to say. And you'll get started on the path to truly using a second language and smiling as you look forward to learning your third or even your fourth. Your quick and simple course comes on 4 CDs, which will rush to your door today. And going through the course is as simple as putting on your headphones for 30 minutes a day for just 10 short days. All you need to do is sit back, push play, listen, and respond. It really is that easy. And you can use the program anytime, anywhere, even while you're doing other things like driving or walking. In fact, if you're like our thousands of ecstatic customers, you'll learn your second language while doing mindless tasks. On your lunch break, during your drive or walk to work, while getting dressed in the morning, while shaving, while walking on the treadmill, while cooking your favorite meals, while washing the dishes. Anytime you've got a pair of headphones and a few minutes. The quick and simple course is available in dozens of the most popular languages. And you're in good hands. Pimsleur is based on over 50 years of scientific research. It's been purchased by millions of people all over the world, and remarkably, it's scientifically sequenced to lock language in your brain after just one listen. Just listen to what Monica had to say. This is fantastic. I've always wanted to speak Egyptian Arabic, and I've been trying for the past 2 years. Nothing worked till now. Within the first week of using your quick and simple course, I learned more than I managed to learn during those 2 years. I'm so amazed. Thank you so much. You made one of my biggest dreams come true. Here's one of my favorites from Drayton Bird. He's a best-selling author, and while doing a consulting project for us, he wanted to share this unpaid endorsement because of how much he loves our methodology. I used to have to visit our office in Frankfurt regularly to review work being created for our biggest client, American Express. It was embarrassing because I couldn't speak the language, not a word. I knew what a difference it made because when I went to our offices in Madrid or Paris, I had enough French and Spanish to get by. I took Pimsleur German on vacation with me in Barbados. I spent less than an hour every day for 7 days. I strolled up and down each morning outside our chalet looking at the ocean, headphones on, listening and repeating. When I went to Frankfurt shortly afterwards, my colleagues were really astonished. So was I, to be honest. And those are just a few of the tens of thousands of emails we've received from incredibly satisfied men and women from around the world after using this simple, proven system. Okay, this sounds amazing, and I'm interested. How do I get started? Honestly, this is the only course like this in existence, so there's nothing to compare it to. So let's just think of the alternatives you could try. Or you've already tried to learn a second language, get ahead in your career, or be able to mingle with locals in any country you visit. You could buy that yellow-covered software program you see heavily advertised on TV and in airports. You know, Rosetta Stone. We learned to speak long before we could read or write, but after visiting a kiosk, you might walk away spending hundreds of dollars just to get started with your first lessons using a method which includes reading, writing, and grammar, all the stuff that slows you down. And if you're like other people who try software programs, you may find yourself frustrated and annoyed at having to spend hours in front of your computer doing drill after drill when you'd much rather be out in the world experiencing life, especially if you're coming home tired after sitting behind a computer all day at work. This might be why so many people who get started using software programs just stop and never even come close to achieving their dream. Pimsleur is practical. It goes wherever you go. Next, you could try enrolling in university language classes. That will cost you between $4,000 and $10,000. And for at least the first year, you'll spend all your time with your head in a textbook learning useless grammar rules and endless vocabulary lists without learning how to actually speak a second language at all. Learning a language isn't like learning math or science, but that's exactly how everyone tries to teach it. Honestly, if you're watching this video, you've probably already tried learning a language that way in high school or college, and you already know how ineffective those techniques actually are. You just don't need to spend that kind of money to get started speaking basic conversations. Finally, you could try total immersion, taking off to a foreign country for months or even a full year to finally get a new language. As long as you've got the guts to go and regularly talk to native speakers, you'll hopefully learn more than anything you could possibly buy, and I highly recommend it. But I'm guessing that will cost you at least $25,000, and probably closer to $100,000 depending on airfare and where you want to live. And you'll have to uproot your entire life, leave your friends and family behind, and get permission from your boss to be out of the country for months on end, which really isn't very likely. At a minimum, Pimsleur gives you confidence before you go. Let me ask you a question. Years from now, when you're looking back on your life, how are you going to feel if you could have gotten started learning a second language or a third or fourth simply by listening and responding to your iPod or MP3 player for 30 minutes a day for 10 short days? Not to get depressing here, but most people let their dreams and ambitions pass them by. They get too busy to come up with some other lame excuse to forget to improve themselves and become the person they always wanted. How are you going to feel if you could have taken that very first step towards becoming bilingual or even trilingual? Could have begun to speak a new language as quickly and easily as your average 2-year-old, exposed yourself to a whole new world of culture, conversation, and opportunity, just by putting on a pair of headphones for 10 days in a row, and you didn't do it? Normally, if you weren't watching this video, you could pay $30 for the quick and simple course. That's less than one session of one class at a local language school, not to mention what you'll pay for supplies and gas. And it's also less than one session with a tutor who certainly doesn't use a methodology that's scientifically sequenced to lock language material into your brain after just one listen. Anyone who's used the quick and simple course to learn a second language would say it's an absolute steal at $30. And honestly, with the cost of creating the CDs and the effort that was put into developing each of these programs, the business guys tell me the absolute least we should sell this program for is $20. But you know what? I want to make this a real no-brainer for you. I know you've been thinking about how a second language can change your life for a long time, whether it's a higher-paying job, more adventurous travel, or just feeling more capable. And I know you've always regretted not learning a second language when you were young, when it was supposedly so easy to do, though you'll discover it's actually much easier for an adult to learn a second language with Dr. Pimsleur's techniques. I want you to try it for yourself and see how well it actually works. That's why, as part of Pimsleur's 30th year anniversary, I've convinced my boss to let you have the quick and simple course in any language you want for the low price of $9.95. And because I really want to make this offer as generous as possible, I also received permission to offer you 100% free shipping if you act now. All you have to do is choose which language you've always wanted to learn from the list below. We've got all the popular languages. We'll immediately ship your course directly to your home, office, or P.O. box. Simply listen and respond to each lesson for 30 minutes per day, and in just 10 days, you'll be amazed as you strike up basic conversations in your new language in shockingly little time. Pimsleur is a best-selling and world-famous language method that's been relied on by more than 25 million people over the past 30 years. Dr. Pimsleur's techniques have been featured in the New York Times, the Daily News, Forbes, PBS, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, the Boston Herald, and dozens more publications in dozens of languages all around the world. And of course, you're backed by our proficiency guarantee. Amaze yourself by the 10th day or you don't pay. No questions asked. Here's how it works. Simply choose which language you've always wanted to learn from the list below. Use the material, go through the audios, experience for yourself how easy it is to just pick up a new language, even one you've never even heard spoken before, using this revolutionary and proven methodology, and without ever having to do language drills, learn grammar rules, or memorize endless lists of vocabulary words. If you aren't absolutely blown away by the experience, if you don't get amazing results, simply send back your quick and simple course within 30 days for a prompt and courteous refund. I think that after you experience for yourself how easy it is to get started speaking using this simple method, you'll see the small $9.95 investment I'm asking you to make today as an absolute steal. But you really do have to act right now. We're offering the quick and simple course for just $9.95 plus free shipping as a way to celebrate Pimsleur's 30th anniversary of helping the world communicate better. And there's no guarantee that we won't raise the price. See, here's the weird thing. When I tell a lot of people that you can strike up basic conversations, amaze your friends and shock the locals with even a hard language like Chinese in just 10 short days, just 30 minutes a day, and for just $9.95, well, to most people, that just sounds unbelievable. It just sounds too cheap and too easy, especially if you've been struggling to learn a second language the traditional way. Our mission is to spread Pimsleur to as many people as humanly possible, to motivate everyone on this planet to become bilingual. But to a lot of people, it just doesn't make sense that you can get started with such incredible results for less than the cost of a movie ticket. And that's why we just might need to raise the price to something more believable and reasonable. But if this video is still up, it means you can still get the quick and simple course in the language of your choice for $9.95 if you act right now. Listen, I don't want to put too fine a point on this, but when you think about it, you've really just got 3 choices ahead of you right now. Option number 1. Stop watching this video and leave this page. Do nothing. Keep going the way you are now. Keep being frustrated by and maybe even ashamed by the fact that you can't speak a second language. Option number 2, enroll in an expensive language learning school where you're forced to pay out the nose just to drill vocabulary and try to ignore that tiny voice in the back of your mind that tells you again and again there was an easier, cheaper, and better way, and you didn't take it. Option number 3, risk nothing at all today. Grab the quick and simple course plus receive free shipping for just $9.95. Simply slip on your headphones and follow along for 30 minutes a day for just 10 short days. It's scientifically sequenced to lock language material into your brain after just one listen. Pimsleur has been bought by the FBI and over 25 million ecstatic customers worldwide. And all you have to do is choose which language you've always wanted to learn from the list below. We've got all the popular languages. We'll rush your program to you, and we'll even cover shipping on our end so you can get started immediately with your quick and simple course. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to learn the mechanics of how a language works, or just how to speak it? Can you imagine what it's going to feel like just to know what to say without scouring your memory for vocabulary or worrying about grammar? Can you imagine what it's going to feel like to speak naturally so you blend in easily, to feel comfortable in a foreign country, to know that striking up basic conversations in any language you want is just 10 short days away? I bet you can, and I bet you can feel how much you want this right now. Over 25 million people around the world have gotten started speaking a second language the simple, easy way with Pimsleur. And you can too, just by choosing a language below right now. I hope you learned a lot from this presentation and were both inspired and encouraged to learn a new language. Thank you for your time today. Still here? Let me just answer some of the most common questions you might have about the Pimsleur approach. I took language classes for years in school and never got anywhere. Can I really strike up basic conversations in just 10 days? Absolutely. We sometimes think that schools have a vested interest in making it take a long time to learn a language. After all, the longer it takes, the more money they make. In college, usually only third and fourth year classes are conversational. Unfortunately, language learning is treated like math or science, and that's exactly what it isn't. When you learn to speak by ear, you'll find that you'll intuitively grasp the language. What if instead teachers used a better methodology and had students speaking at a high degree of proficiency first, and only then taught everything else? At least we'd all be thinking and speaking in the language continuously for 4 years, and as a result wouldn't forget it for life. How is this different than Rosetta Stone? The short answer is that it's 100% audio-based and doesn't require a computer. Dr. Pimsleur found that the most effective way to learn to speak is by ear, and one of the advantages of using an audio program is that it's portable and easy to use. That means you can use it while you're doing something else that's mindless, like going to work, doing the dishes, walking on a treadmill, and so forth. We've had a lot of customers who have bought Rosetta Stone, and the common feedback is that it's fairly impractical. You see, most customers who buy language learning courses are at least 35 years old, educated, and work behind a computer all day. It's really difficult to make time at home after work to sit behind a computer again. Will I be able to read and write in a foreign language after using this program? The short answer is no, and here's why that's a good thing. Dr. Pimsleur found that focusing on reading and writing before learning to speak makes it very difficult to learn a language. He wanted to find a way to allow adults to learn faster than children, and essentially, it meant adults needed to learn like children, and that's done by hearing. As Dr. Pimsleur used to say, when you know what sounds right, everything else is easy, and that includes reading and writing. We'd suggest going to your local college bookstore and buying a textbook if you want to learn to read and write. We only focus on oral proficiency. That being said, if you're learning a language with an alphabet similar to English, like German, French, Italian, and so forth, after learning to speak, when moving on to reading, you'll experience a feeling like seeing an English word written on paper that you perhaps had only ever heard by ear before. In other words, it feels familiar. I don't have a lot of free time. Can I use the Pimsleur approach? Absolutely. Just listen and respond for 30 minutes a day on your iPod, MP3, or CD player. If you can't listen in one session, then break it up. And remember, you can learn anywhere, and there's always 30 minutes in a day. Most folks don't need to repeat a lesson more than once. We really have a near foolproof system for learning a language if you can invest just 30 minutes a day. And if 30 minutes a day is too frequent, or you need to skip a day here or there, don't worry about it. This isn't a race. Just continue where you left off. Aren't I too old to learn a new language? I thought only kids could learn a new language easily. You're never too old. Can you believe that Dr. Pimsleur discovered that adults can learn a language even faster than kids? For each minute of instruction, he could create a building block of knowledge that would have taken a child 4 to 5 hours to be exposed to in a natural environment. And he could sequence his lessons using memory decay patterns so that words were reintroduced in new structures, allowing his students to learn something new while repeating something previously learned and not feeling like they were memorizing. If the Pimsleur approach works so well, why isn't everybody using it? Why are our schools still making kids do vocabulary drills and grammar tests? I'm sure you've heard of many people complaining about our school system and trying to change it. Fortunately, there are a few progressive teachers like Mary Snipes who teaches Spanish at a high school in Arizona. She uses Pimsleur in her class and had to pay for the course out of her own pocket. Did you know that many schools are so strapped for cash that they only ever plan to buy textbooks every 10 years? Isn't that incredible? Who shouldn't try the Pimsleur approach? Anyone who is 10 or older will be successful with the Pimsleur approach. We even have customers who are 80 years old. Some people believe that they're visual learners and don't think Pimsleur will help them. Dr. Paul Pimsleur himself was a visual learner. He was a professor and loved to read. However, he couldn't ignore the proof he saw in his research. Learning by ear is the most effective way to learn a language because humans are uniquely gifted to attach complex meanings to sounds. And that's why any language learning program, to be truly effective, must be sound-based rather than visual. Look, when compared to other programs, the Pimsleur approach is as easy as listening to music. You can sing along with more than 2,000 songs because of a function of working memory called the phonological loop. The Pimsleur approach harnesses this phonological loop so that you remember not just the words, but exactly how they sound and what they mean. That all being said, we came up with this simple 10-point checklist. If any of the following 10 items appeal to you, then you definitely should not buy our course. You want to memorize grammar rules. You want verb conjugation drills that you can practice over and over. You want to reference a dictionary frequently while speaking. You enjoy studying textbooks and answering the review questions at the end. You like homework. You like taking tests. You want to learn to read before you learn to speak. You really want to do drills on a computer and you're willing to block out time for that. You like to spend hours memorizing vocabulary lists. You believe learning should be hard. Obviously, I'm kidding around here, but I hope that makes the point. We've found that almost everyone can learn using the Pimsleur approach because, after all, almost every child learns how to speak, and it's the same basic method, just scientifically improved to make it more efficient and effective. Of course, you might not be successful with our course if you have serious hearing issues or trouble repeating simple phrases and imitating native speakers. Could you explain why the Pimsleur method is so effective and how I should use it for the best results? The Pimsleur approach is the easy, reliable, and most natural way to learn a second language. It's all because of Dr. Pimsleur's 4 legendary principles. His first principle is graduated interval recall. Dr. Pimsleur made a lifelong study of how long we remember new information. Even more importantly, he was able to determine the precise intervals between repetitions that are necessary to achieve maximum retention. If we are reminded too soon or too late, retention suffers. The Pimsleur approach repeats words and phrases at precisely the right intervals and on exactly the right days. His second principle is anticipation. Dr. Pimsleur discovered that repetition alone isn't nearly enough. Learning happens most easily when you anticipate the answers to questions. The Pimsleur approach is the only method that triggers correct anticipation, and you're going to love it. His third principle is organic learning. Organic learning is natural learning. You learn to speak long before you learn to write, and you learn to speak by hearing words spoken correctly and in context. Dr. Pimsleur's research was the first to prove that language is assimilated naturally through hearing. Other language courses use the opposite approach, attempting to teach language as though it were math or science, which is why most people think it's hard to learn a foreign language. Finally, his fourth principle is core vocabulary. You don't need to learn all the words in a language, just the ones people use every day. Fluency isn't determined by how many words you know, but by how well you use the words and phrases that are part of common everyday language. You don't need to learn 1 million words to learn English. You can be articulate with a vocabulary of only 2,500 words and phrases. The Pimsleur approach focuses on these 4 essential principles, and as a result, the time and energy required to learn a second language is dramatically reduced. To answer the second part of your question, the best way to use the course is to just listen and respond for 30 minutes a day. And the reality is that Pimsleur goes where you go, and as long as you're paying attention, it works perfectly while you're doing something else, so you'll stick with it, and that makes all the difference. What's your most popular language? By far, it's Spanish, which is almost 50% of our business. If you're not sure about which language to buy, we'd highly recommend you try Spanish. Imagine the adventure you can have traveling with ease to the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Spain, and all of Latin America. If you want to live like a king or retire down south where your dollars go far, Spanish could also be life-changing. After Spanish, the most popular languages are French, Italian, German, and Mandarin Chinese, in that order. How do I know I can trust your guarantee? We've been online since 2000 and have served millions of people. Our proficiency guarantee is very straightforward. Amaze yourself by the 10th day or you don't pay. No questions asked. I don't think we would be one of the fastest growing companies in America for the past 4 years if we weren't honoring our word. We've won awards such as the Inc. 5000, Philadelphia 100, Inner City 100, Future 50, Technology 500, and year after year we're among the 500 largest online retailers in the U.S. according to Internet Retailer magazine. I think you'll be pleased to know that if you ever have any questions, we strive to answer our phone calls in 30 seconds or less. Now all you need to do is try out the Pimsleur approach and discover how easy it is to learn a second language without memorizing vocabulary, without written homework or tests, and using the same method that's been purchased by the FBI and millions of people around the world. Follow your heart. Spend $9.95 and 30 minutes a day for 10 days. There's a Czech proverb which says, "You live a new life for every new language you speak. If you know only one language, you live only once." How many times have you spent just a few days and gained a new perspective on life? That's what really happens when you gain your new language through the Pimsleur approach. Just choose which language you've always wanted to learn from the list below. Place your order on the secure order page, and we'll rush your quick and simple course out to you right away. I promise you that you'll strike up basic conversations, amaze your friends, and shock the locals in just 10 days. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Please email us or call